Welcome to URBONUS podcast. I'm the host, Donatas URBONUS, and this time I'm not with my regular co-host, Rytis Vyšniauskas, but let me explain everything. We have one McCollum in States who is actually doing quality and entertaining job as the ESPN analyst for the finals. But here in Europe, we have another McCollum who did a good job making his debut on URBONUS as a co-host in winter. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm glad to have the former EuroCup champion, EuroCup MVP, and EuroCup top scorer, Errick McCollum. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Errick, I mean, if we have McCollum brothers on the same NBA TV show, for example, what kind of discussion it would be? Would you be shouting at each other like Stephen A does? Or you would be like a team, just like CJ and JJ Rodriguez?
No, we would agree on some topics, but we see things differently. So it would be a little sibling rivalry, trying to see who's right, who's wrong. Like even now, he picked the Celtics. I picked the Warriors. So, there would definitely be some backlash and some back and forth and some jabs thrown. But it definitely would be entertaining and informative.
So, what was your reaction when you saw his thoughts about Draymond and Celtics and them winning the NBA Finals?
Yeah, I just told him that it's hard to trust youth. I think the Celtics are more talented. I love their size, their versatility on defense, but this is new for them. They haven't been there, and they don't play with that same team-oriented game, the ball movement, the selflessness that the Warriors have. And I said, I never trust the young players when the money's on the line.
Okay, fair enough. And what would be the other topics you would agree and disagree the most?
I think we like similar type of players. Some of the scorers, some of the guys who can really change the game. We kind of have that feel for scoring the ball as well. So we're going to appreciate guys who can do it in a magnitude of ways. And I think just our overall knowledge and experience using everything we went through basketball, through life, we'll be able to apply that on the show and stuff. So it would be fun. Maybe that's something down the road we could explore. But definitely something that I think is possible.
Oh, yeah, that's for sure. And does CJ, he like this new role as the ESPN analyst? Maybe he even receives more support from fans right now than just playing basketball.
Yeah, he's enjoying it. I think oftentimes we always think that basketball is going to last forever. We think it's going to be something that, is always there. But you do age, you do get older. Life changes, and this is just another part of life that you have to prepare for. You have to get ready, and when you've done something your entire life that you love and you enjoy, you want to find a second career that you also can find that same feeling. And I think just being around the game, talking about it, being able to give back, that's something that was intriguing to him, and he's taking it all in. And it's also a good way to kind of like do a mini internship to see if this is really what you want to do post basketball.
Yeah, so today with Errick, we'll talk some EuroLeague basketball. We'll discuss some off-season moves which are happening or might happen. And actually, we'll try to throw some interesting free agency scenarios that will include Efes, Vasilije Micic, Fenerbahce, Maccabi, Monaco, and a few others. So let's start with your former team, Anadolu Efes, which you played for before their EuroLeague era as a potential three-peat team has started. I just have two quick questions for you. The first one about your former coach, Ergin Ataman. If Ergin Ataman becomes the assistant coach of the NBA team and brings his fists, his predictions, at least some part of his crazy personality, what do you think what America would be talking about him 1 year from now?
If he did leave, I'd be surprised just because, he's had so much success in Turkey. It's where he's comfortable, it's where he's home. He's taken over the national team role. Like if there is a time to leave, it is after 2 championships, but, he would have to, continue to improve his English, adapt to the role. Assistant coaches don't have, that same power, that same control. And, he's a guy who, likes to have the reins and as you want to say, the keys to the car. And I think it would be a big adjustment, sometimes saying your ideas and, maybe them not getting used all the time. And I don't know if that's for him, but it seems like he has an interest to go to the NBA, and he wants a new challenge. And maybe after this third title, if they try to make that run, that would for sure be the time to go.
Yeah, I agree. If Efes failed to defend the title, maybe there was a higher possibility watching him going to the United States. But now it's different, and probably now it's different because they're not dropping their bar in the EuroLeague. I mean, they already kept Shane Larkin on a 2-year extension. They already signed Will Clyburn, and probably they're not that far away from keeping Vasilije Micic. And they're very close to signing Ante Žižić. It seems like it's getting done, and it'll be announced after the season will be over. It actually might be over tonight when we are recording the podcast, because Fenerbahce is playing Efes, Game 4 of the Turkish League finals. But anyways, having this squad, and especially if Vasilije Micic remains in Efes, do you think that this new big three of Micic, Larkin, and Clyburn, and also upgrades like Žižić, makes them clear favorites to defend the title and to go for a three-peat?
I think so. They have continuity, and they've been together for many years. You got to think this squad has been together, the core, 4 or 5 years. You bring in a guy like Will Clyburn, who's everything they were missing. Someone who can shoulder the offensive load, someone who can score in the post and outside. He draws fouls. He improves their transition game. He's a two-way player. At 6'7", he can go guard 1 through 4. He can switch on the 5 if it's late in the clock. And oftentimes Efes struggled when Micic was hurt, or when Larkin was hurt, or, when those two had to kind of shoulder the load. I mean, you even saw in the final, it was very tough to manufacture any points for them, outside of those players. And I think Clyburn coming in just kind of alleviates, all that stress, all those issues, and, gives them more balance. And he's a guy who can play in the system and who can play in the freelance offense as well. So, I love the signing. And I think, with him, with the big man Zizic inside, if they can kind of keep Pleiss, because you need that big man shooter as well. He was instrumental for them in the Final Four. I think they're the clear favorite to win it.
Do you think there might be some ball sharing issues in that team? Maybe they will have to play some guys off the bench, for example.
I think
defensive issues.
I think Clyburn's comfortable coming off the bench. This year he came off the bench as a 6-man. He could be the starter as well. As you saw, Shane's unselfish. He can go out there and score 30, but I think this year, he, was getting the team involved more. He was scoring about 15 points a game. He can create. And when you're chasing history, everyone's just trying to win the game. I think that allows you to come in selfless. Everybody's already under contracts. So, there won't be some greed or some selfishness. Clyburn has a 2-year deal. Shane just did a 2-year deal. I'm sure Micic will probably get an extension as well. And that kind of allows players to kind of relax as far as a stress standpoint, and just go out there and play basketball. And a lot of teams don't realize that. But, when you give guys that comfort, that stability, oftentimes it leads to better performance.
Yeah, there's one important thing that Micic is on a 3-year contract with Efes, but the thing is that every summer he has the NBA option and exit clause, and this year compared to the last one, there's a higher chance that he might go and he might end up signing in the NBA. Personally, I didn't hear anything besides Chicago Bulls. There are some other teams in the mix. It seems like it's kind of obvious that he won't go there for the OKC, so his draft rights has to be traded for him to move to the NBA. Shane Larkin's situation is also very interesting because despite signing this 2-year extension, he also kept this NBA window open, and what is also intriguing that he kept it open even for this summer. And from what I heard, the Washington Wizards really likes him. So it will take some time to see if all of them will stay. But I mean, the window is open and there are a lot of things you cannot control, like draft, trades, free agency. So it's unclear what we'll see in July. But for example, in a hypothetical situation, if Vasilije Micic is leaving, who do you see as the best replacement for Micic? Or maybe Efes having this Larkin, Clyburn, maybe they have to find or look for a different type of player, because maybe it's just hard to find a specific replacement for Vasilije Micic.
Yeah, it's tough because Micic is a good scorer. He's a good shooter. He has good size and he complements Larkin well. So when you think about replacing him, if you want a 1, you're going to have to get a guard with size because, Shane's a little shorter. You don't want to wear him out defensively and take away from his offensive game. And so when I start thinking about guards who have EuroLeague experience, who have had success, I'm thinking Wade Baldwin. He's 6'4". He's explosive. He can get to the basket. You would need him to play, sometimes more of a facilitator role with Clyburn there. But I think with his size, his defensive versatility, he could be a guy that you could plug in and could be successful there. Now with the addition of Clyburn, now maybe you don't need as much scoring. And, with that, I think Perrier Henry could be a good pickup. He's a guy that could kind of get them in their offense. He's a taller guard. He plays good defense. He's a smart player. He has experience, from the years in ACB with Baskonia, now with Fener. I think that could be a really good pickup because you're going to want to find a guy you're thinking Micic gives you 18 points a game, 17 points a game. But with Clyburn, you might not need a guy who can score that much. And you can get someone who can kind of just facilitate and get guys the ball in different spots.
Yeah, that's a good point, because I was also looking for some floor generals, let's say, and it's really hard somebody in Europe who could try to follow Vasilije Micic footsteps. I actually went after Lorenzo Brown. He had also a great season with Unix Kazan. And what was interesting, I had him, I compared him with Vasilije Micic on Instats, Advanced Stats database, and their numbers are pretty much identical. I mean, the only main difference is that Micic is just a bit more efficient scorer, but Lorenzo Brown does all these other things a little bit better, like getting more rebounds, steals, and he's also tall. He has that size to play good defense. He can both create and score. So, of course, after that season in Kazan, it's too early to say if he's ready, to step into MVP's shoes. But at least skill-wise, even maybe personality-wise, because they're both a bit, let's say, closed leaders who like to lead by an example, not just by talking and just gathering everybody in the locker room. Maybe he could be a nice fit, but at the same time, if Micic leaves, it's a really big bet, for Efes to replace such an important player. But Perrier Henry one was interesting. Yeah, I actually forgot about him because, okay, he's under contract with Fenerbahce for the next year too, but it's not guaranteed. And I think that Fenerbahce has a team option. And from what I hear, it seems like that Perrier Henry actually might leave Fenerbahce, so he might be available for Efes.
Yeah, I like that Lorenzo Brown one. He was excellent this year. He had Kazan in the playoffs, before they were kicked out of the EuroLeague. He does all the things you mentioned. He has the size, he has the athleticism. He could be perfect there. And the difference is, too, I think when he had his struggles in Fener, he didn't really have freedom. Ataman is a coach who gives his guards freedom, allows you to play that style, to get up tempo, to play that pick and roll game. And I think you would see him thrive in that system.
Yeah, and by the way, if we're talking about Micic, what do you think, what's the best NBA fit for him?
Yeah, it's going to be tough because, OKC owning his rights, they're high on Josh Giddey, who just had an excellent year. Shea is a great point guard, one of the best young players in the league. So there's not many minutes there for him. And you're talking about a guy who commands a big salary. So he's going to get paid, accordingly. But he's also young enough to where he's going to want minutes. And is he going to be happy playing 10 to 12 minutes a game?
No.
I can't see that. Do you leave being a EuroLeague star, MVP, close to home? Okay, you're not in Serbia, but, Turkey's very close. I just can't see it. But if there was a team, the team I would think that probably could be most helpful for him, I would say maybe the Spurs. I mean, they have DeJounte Murray, and he could come in and, be another guard. Pop is, likely to play European players to give you a chance. If you come in, you fight, you play hard. That's a system that, he could have a shot at. But there's so much, like the hardest position in the NBA, I think right now is the 1 and the 2. Like it's so deep. There's so many good players in the East and the West. And even when you think about the bad teams, I mean, you go to Sacramento, they have De'Aaron Fox. You want to think about all the teams who struggled. Even though Charlotte, didn't really make the playoffs, they had LaMelo Ball's there, Terry Rozier. I mean, you start to think where could he find somewhere where he wants 20 plus minutes a game? It's going to be extremely difficult.
Yeah, exactly. Because he already emphasized that he's not chasing this NBA dream desperately. He's looking for a solid role, solid minutes, maybe coming off the bench, but getting at least, as I mentioned, around 20 minutes per game. And probably, I believe that he prefers winning teams. And maybe Chicago could be an option. They were trying to make that trade last year. From what I remember, they might go after him this year. But again, I mean, NBA is a tough beast. A lot of unpredictable things might happen, and if once again the situation won't provide him any possibilities, I wouldn't be surprised if we'll see him in EuroLeague again. And it's not a bad backup plan when you have, especially when you have already Will Clyburn. And his contract set up for Efes, when you have Ante Žižić, another big man, which Vasilije Micic really likes, because he likes to play with these good rollers, with tall guys who can help you finishing high above the rim in terms of adding these putbacks, just like Tibor Plais did in the final game against Real Madrid, and who doesn't require ball a lot. So yeah, it's not even a bad thing for him to stay in EuroLeague, to go for a free beat, and maybe to establish the Efes as the best EuroLeague team of all time in modern era.
Yeah, and I think Chicago is tricky because if they keep Zach and they keep DeMar, you're talking about two guys that play 38 minutes a night, 37 minutes. There's not much time. Then you look at Lonzo Ball. He's going to play 30 minutes. He was a lottery pick. And then Kobe White, had a good season. So it's really tough. I think he's a star in Europe. He's a great player. I think his game is better suited for Europe than the league. And I think that's why there's teams that are a little bit hesitant. I mean, we saw it with Kevin Pangos. He was great in Europe, came off an excellent season. He picks a Cavs team who's supposed to underachieve, who's not supposed to do very well. You think he's going to slide in maybe at that 2 position. Colin Sexton just emerges out of nowhere. And Darius Garland plays excellent. Pangos finds himself getting DNPs, getting no time, and he tries to get back to Europe as soon as he can. And that's a situation that I think can happen to a lot of guys if you don't find the right fit.
Talking about the other Turkish team, big powerhouse Fenerbahce Istanbul, they're facing a massive rebuild this summer. It's not announced yet, but coach Dimitris Itoudis is taking over the team. There are a lot of expiring contracts, especially including star players like Jan Vesely, who's rumored to go to Barcelona. Nando De Colo is on an expiring contract, and it's not clear yet if he will stay with Fenerbahce. So, starting this rebuild, if we had to choose the superstar, EuroLeague superstar, you would start rebuilding your team in Europe. Who would be that guy?
Like, you can go get anybody?
Let's say trying to be more realistic. You cannot get players who are under contracts with other big teams.
Okay. Well, now I know it's not going to happen now. Before Itoudis got the job, I would have said maybe Mike James. He's free. He has the potential to lead a team. He has a skill. He's done it. He showed what he did with Monaco. But I'm not sure a reunion with Mike James and Itoudis would, go so well. So with that situation there, if I had to choose a next player that has the ability to take over games and can kind of lead them, I think you keep a couple of the core guys. You can't change the entire roster, because it's like starting from scratch. It's going to be too difficult. But Itoudis is going to want to get, his DNA in there, his type of team, guys who can switch, defensive versatility. He likes bigs who can post. He likes also to have a different lineup where those bigs can stretch the court. And, he likes his guards to be able to defend and to have size. I guess there's not a lot of guys available that I think can really change, maybe the culture in Fener right now, just because guys are stuck under contract. But Itoudis is a good coach.
Maybe that's, let's say, the window to go for NBA players. Like, for example, I remember last year, Zenit St. Petersburg, they kind of surprised us all, bringing Shabazz Napier over here. And we have to admit, he was great in the preseason. He was scoring like hell. And maybe that's an idea which other teams should follow, because sometimes it looks like this EuroLeague basketball, EuroLeague market is kind of packed, and especially with this free agency, with not many greatest level, I would emphasize, guards in the market available to sign. It's probably this situation requires some brainstorming. And when you have Mauricio Gherardini at your office, he knows NBA market very well. So maybe that's an opportunity to go for these NBA players. I don't have a specific name because it's hard to find these, let's say, borderline NBA players who could go and adapt in EuroLeague to lead Fenerbahce in the EuroLeague, which is very, very tough tournament. There are some ex-EuroLeague players like Tomasz Satoransky, Brad Wanamaker, maybe some other guys who could come and help Fenerbahce to be that top team again. It's kind of unfiltered water for that kind of opportunity. But I think that they have to be creative in this market. I was actually thinking about Nick Kalaitis, because from what I hear, his situation in Europe is pretty unclear. I mean, with Barca, okay, he's under the contract, but there are rumors, or at least there are some teams that are checking if he's staying, because probably you saw Tomasz Satoransky having this picture with him and Šarūnas Jasikevičius at some restaurant. There are reports about them being in talks, and it's pretty hard to imagine Barca accommodating both Kalaitis and Satoransky on the same team. So maybe Kalaitis will be moving, and maybe for Fenerbahce that's an answer you want to go with, to have him. Nikola Milutinov is pretty close to signing with them. He could be your centerpiece at the front line. But at the same time, I have all these doubts. For example, Kalaitis, I think he turns 34 during the season. And me personally, I don't remember any championship team which had, I would say, veterans like Nick Kalaitis as your go-to guys. So it's a tough market to start a rebuild, I would say.
Yeah. There's one guy I was thinking, because I know Fener, probably wants to save money. This guy's stock is probably a little bit down because the last 2 years he's had, some rough endings with his teams. But he's a talented player. Thomas Hurtel. He could be a good guard that you could, put out there that can play, but you got to pair him with a defensive-oriented two guard who has size, who can score. I think a lot of these guys getting off the market, could be hurtful. I think Okobo, that would have been a good target for Fener. I think he's a guy who can really score. He's young. He won't be, super expensive. And he could have been a great signing. But sometimes if you're slow to pull the trigger on players, you'll miss out. And then I know they probably wanted to wait until they understood the coaching situation based on how this finals went and based on if Itutis was going to be there or not. But if you snooze, you lose. And if you don't move quick in the market, sometimes, guys will be gone, or they'll have agreements, secret agreements, already handled.
Yeah, that's the thing, because from what I heard, Fenerbahce, they were also looking at him and they followed his situation really closely during the season. But it seems like this kind of uncertainty or being late in the market didn't help them at all, because he, at least from what I've heard, he found an agreement with Monaco way earlier, and everything shows that he's going to end up there. And as you said, yeah, it would be a great replacement even for Nando De Colo, as a younger Frenchman with kind of same abilities to score the ball, some new face in the EuroLeague, because as I said, I think that we're missing some new faces in the EuroLeague. A lot of good players are going to the NBA from the EuroLeague. Some NBA guys are coming, but it's so hard to adjust there. And for example, especially talking about guards, I mean, can you name some great point guard which had his EuroLeague rookie season? It's tough. Probably we found Keenan Evans as one of the best rookies point guards in the EuroLeague. But I mean, we're not talking about the elite players. Shabazz Napier, I mean, that maybe he was the one. Yeah. But he ended up getting injuries all the time. So it's a tough situation, really.
There's no rookie who you're probably going to want to build your team around, especially at the point guard position, the most demanding, the toughest spot. And then playing for Fener, where there's high expectations. Fans are expecting Final Fours, Turkish championships. Like, that's a big responsibility. You're going to need a guy who's experienced and, who's an extremely high-level player to kind of right the ship.
If you were a GM, what's your first move building the EuroLeague team? Who do you prefer? Do you want elite point guard, or you want like player like Will Clyburn? Maybe big men?
I go first point guard. They have the ball in their hand the most. A good point guard can make the game easier for everyone. They can get the ball in their hands. They also have the ability to score. The game is so much pick and roll. So if you get a good point guard, you can kind of dictate the tempo. It makes the coach's job easier because he's not always having to stress or do everything. He understands that the the point guard can kind of lead the team and kind of put them in good situations. And then my second pick, I'm going with the 5. You want a guy who's athletic, who can protect the rim, who can finish. If he can hit the free throws, that's good too. But I think just a defensive 5 who's athletic, I think that's golden. And then the third spot, I'm going with a scorer. You know, it doesn't matter if he's a 2 or 3, but you need someone who can fill it up when your plays aren't working, when you're in the playoffs and, you know, the team has heavily scouted you. They know your actions before you even get to the spot on the court. You need a guy who can make something out of nothing. I think if you have those 3 things and you put complementary pieces around them, you can be extremely successful.
So if you start the team from scratch and we have all EuroLeague players available, who's your number 1 pick of the EuroLeague draft?
Number 1, I got to go with Micic. I mean, he's unguardable. The size, the versatility. He stretches the floor. He posts up. You know, he's too big for the 4 men. You know, he's too agile for the 5s. He's smart, draws fouls. I mean, you know, I think he's just a nightmare matchup, and he's playing in a system that's a little bit restrictive, you know, that's controlled. You know, you have to do, you know, exactly what the coaches say. You have to run through, you know, there's not too many breaking the plays in Barcelona. So the fact that he's able to have that success to put up those type of numbers, you know, when he doesn't have the ultimate green light, you know, just shows how special he is.
But he's not a guard. And in the first round, you're missing a lot of great guards who are going to be drafted. So who would you pair him up together in the second round?
In the second round, because Micic, he's just a special guy. I'd normally go guard first, but with him, like that size, the way he shoots, like you have to take him. But for the guard, I would go Larkin. Like, I mean, he's explosive. He can really shoot it. He's efficient. He can dominate a game. He finishes at the basket. I mean, it's extremely impressive because he's very short and he's able to somehow, you know, finish with the trees, make shots, and he's clutch. I mean, you see him like he'll hit 9, 10 threes, or, you know, he could get to the hole and get to the line 10 to 12 times. So like he's a guy, his efficiency is excellent. You know, I like guys who can, you know, score efficiently, shoot good percentages. And if somehow, even when he's scoring all those points, the team still feels involved. So like he's a guy that, you know, if I can't get Micic, that's who I'm going with.
But there's no chance that you're getting Shane Larkin in the second round. So in your dreams, Errick.
Yeah, this is a dreamland. This is for sure. I mean, they're probably 1 and 2 off the board.
Yeah, but I have to admit that Efes, for what they did, I mean, bringing both Micic and Shane Larkin, I mean, that's probably the best way to start building a championship team, really, because in this modern EuroLeague, guards, they're winning tournaments. And even in the Final Four, we saw that as soon as they reached the stage where they were getting closer to winning the title, we all knew that the ball will go to Micic and Larkin's hands, and they will do their best to win it all. And it's just impossible to stop them. You can contain one guy, but you cannot. But then you have Shane Larkin next to Micic, or vice versa. So it's just amazing thing what Efes did, and they're dangerous. If they're keeping all of them, they're really dangerous. Monaco seems to be a dangerous team. They have this agreement with Leo Kobo. There is Jordan Lloyd, another unannounced agreement for the next year, and they tried to keep Mike James. I know that a lot of people thought that when they kind of reached the agreement with Kobo, when they had this deal with Lloyd, it seemed like that maybe they're preparing for departure of Mike James. But from what I hear, the initial plan is to keep Mike James. He's still the priority signing for this summer. The question is what kind of salary they will agree on. Probably that's the last thing they have to find an agreement. But let's say it's more likely that he will stay in Monaco, and it's very high chance that we will have this backcourt of Mike James, Okobo, and Lloyd, which is, I have to admit, pretty rare in the EuroLeague basketball, because these are, let's say, offensively oriented players, elite scorers, and somehow they will have to share their roles, responsibilities. So that's where I want to hear your opinion. I mean, was it the main piece, the missing piece for Monaco to make the Final Four? Or you also have some concerns how this project with all of them on the same backcourt will end up?
I think Sasha Obradovic is a really good coach. I think he'll find a way to mix and match the lineups. I don't like the signing of all three. I think it's a little bit of overkill. You have too many guys who do the same things. And I like my backcourt to be versatile. Like I want guys who bring different elements to the game and do different things. And it allows them to complement each other. But when everyone does the same thing, it's almost like, going to be a battle, sometimes like for the ball or, for possessions. But I do think that Jordan Lloyd shows he can play in the system. Javi Pascual is very disciplined. He has 50, 60 sets. So it shows that, he's intelligent enough to understand that. And you saw that he showed his growth. He was in a system in Valencia and where he kind of had to maintain himself and play within the team. Then he went to Red Star and he showed with that freedom, he can be that scorer. And then back to Zenit, where he showed that, he can be controlled. He can play, for the team. He can defend. He can do different things. The only thing that's also alarming is that they're all smaller guards. It's going to be difficult to play all three together unless you're playing against a smaller team. Mike James, I don't know, maybe 5'10", 5'11", Okobo 6'2", and then Jordan Lloyd probably 6'3". So, I mean, for me, you probably obviously start Mike James, and then I would start Jordan Lloyd alongside him because I think they can mesh well. And then I would bring Okobo off the bench for the scoring. I understand why they signed him. He's a French player. He's extremely talented. You never want to have too few players, and then you never know what could happen with Mike James. If you put all your eggs in one basket and he decides to go to another team, and now you're stuck with only Jordan Lloyd, and you're going to be in a similar position that you were last year where you didn't really have many creators. And I think that hurt them in this series. I think against Olympiacos, when Paris Lee fouled out, there was really no one outside of Mike who could really create. And with Thomas Walkup, defending at a high level, and then bringing the defensive help, guys on the elbows, double teams, if they had that secondary ball handler who kind of lightened the load or who could attack Seleucus, it could have changed things for them. So I know why they watched those series. They watched throughout the year. They lack primary ball handlers and guys who can make things happen. And you can tell they remedied that this year by signing 3. Maybe it's too much, but I do think it's 3 really good players, and they're going to all have to buy in, and there's going to have to be sacrifice on each end.
Yeah, we'll have to switch one of them, I don't know, to maybe even Thomas Walkup for his defensive and the playmaking skills. Maybe even, Nick Kalaitis. I would actually love to see Nick Weiler-Bob next to this group with his defensive presence, with his size, with his willingness to play for the team. But what I have to admit that Jordan Lloyd really surprised me last year, because I also knew him as a scorer, as a shooter, as a deadly scorer who can shoot from everywhere. There's no contested shot for the player like Jordan Lloyd. But for Xavi, when he had these point guard problems, when Shabazz Napier was out, some other point guards were injured, Xavi Pascual needed a point guard. And Jordan Lloyd also had this role of a playmaker in that team. He played for both positions, and he was willing to accept different roles. He was willing to accept the role of being next to somebody and next to scorer. And I think he did a great job in Zenit. And from what I've heard, he's a great guy both on and off the floor. So I believe he's matured and experienced enough to accept any role he will be given in this Monaco team. And of course, Mike James is aging, and probably they will give him some rest in the domestic league, where Elio Kobo is a Frenchman. He will be a huge advantage. And me personally, I would also love to see some different players in this backcourt, but at the same time, if they will manage to find good pieces around them, which won't be easy, they will be fine. But at the same time, looking at this market, and I see players like Volkup, Weiler-Bob, they're under contracts for the next year. It's going to be tough. It's going to be tough, really. Both in EuroCup, I couldn't find great pieces to fit this backcourt. Although I like some other players, like for example, John Brown, who's also about to sign a contract with Monaco. Donta Hall, even Jaron Blossom Game. I mean, these are good players. These are good signings. Most of them are willing to work off the ball. Most of them are really good defenders. Maybe they are still lacking of a good shooter at the 4 position, but they might be very nice and maybe even better built for the next year when they were in the previous one. Anything to add about Monaco?
Yeah, I think I agree with you big time. I love John Brown. Great signing defensively. He's really good guarding any position on the switches. I've been playing 12 years professionally, and he's the best pick and roll defender I've ever played against. Like, he's everywhere. He's active. You kind of always want to target where he's at on the court. You don't want to attack him. But with that said, they also do need a 4-man stretch shooter, because sometimes you can slide John Brown to the 5, and he has that physicality and the smarts to guard the 5. And sometimes I think that's when he's at his best, when he's playing at 5, because he's involved in all the pick and roll actions, and he allows the team to take a step up defensively. So they definitely need some shooting. That will help, space the court for all those great scores, and that will give them space and room to operate. But without that, the paint's going to be extremely clogged, and it will be easy to shrink the court on them.
Yeah, some numbers to take into consideration. First of all, usage percentage. I think that's Okobo, Lloyd, and Mike James. Their usage percentage was from 26% to 29%, and I believe that all of them made top 10 or top 15 in the EuroLeague, which is huge. And also defensive ratings were not in all of these guys' favor. Basically, all of them, with all of them on the court, Monaco, Asvel, or Zenit, they were worse defensively, at least by 6 points per 100 possession. So these things just kind of wrap up what we're talking about. I mean, finding better defensive players. They already have some defensive players like John Brown, Donta Hall, and other guys, and finding somebody who will be willing to play these guys, who like to take these shots, who like to play ISO, and just accept this role of being off-ball players, and trying to find how to be successful without having the ball in their hands.
Like Efes, they got a lot of role guys.
Right. And that was a good combination, yeah. Okay, one other intriguing team. Oh, by the way, there's one thing I want to address. There's one problem I want to address. We're talking about these deals which will be officialized after the season. For example, Okobo, maybe Jan Vesely to Barcelona, Jordan Lloyd. I mean, there are many more moves. There's even some crazy situation when I reported that coach Joan Penarroya was about to sign with Baskonia after the season, and it turned out that Baskonia and Valencia, they faced each other in the playoffs of Spanish League. And what was interesting, that Baskonia with coach Spahia, they beat Valencia, but then after the season, coach Penarroya is replacing Spahia at Baskonia, at the helm of Baskonia. So that was a weird situation, but there are even more situations. And where I'm going to, I would like to see something like a free agency period in Europe, maybe some tampering rules, because a lot of times players, teams, GMs, and coaches, they're really put in some crazy situations where they have players already signed with another team, with other teams in March, in April, in May, and it's just so tough. And especially in Europe, it's so specific. Europe is such a specific continent of basketball, because mainly after the EuroLeague, you kind of feel a big decrease of motivation, I would say, effort, energy, and intensity in the domestic leagues, because season in Europe is really long. It takes more than 10 months, and it's really intensive. I mean, every game matters. There's a lot of pressure. A lot of coaches are changing. Players are moving. It's very hard league, hard continent to stay in. And then, I mean, you're already tired in June, where you're fighting for these domestic league titles, and some players, especially key players, they already have these contracts in their pockets for the next year. So, I mean, I think it's bad for the European basketball. I know that it's hard to find common set of rules for all Europe, because we have EuroLeague, Champions League, domestic leagues, different countries, different rules. So it would be really hard to find something like a free agency period, which could start at July 1st or something. But probably, we have to take this into consideration, that it's not going well for European basketball handling this situation. What do you think?
No, I think you're right. I think it creates a lot of problems within teams and organizations. Imagine if you're a player and you're out there playing, and you read that somebody's coming to replace you. You could take that one or two ways. One, it could motivate you, make you play harder, make you want to fight, because now you have to maybe find another job somewhere. Or two, you could preserve your body, be cognizant of injury, and save yourself, since the team didn't have the decency or the respect to have a conversation with you or your agent, or, to even wait until the season is over. It's very hard to be professional in those type of situations. Even being a coach, reading that you're going to be replaced and you haven't even finished the season, you could potentially win the championship and they're going to replace you. Like, I mean, it's extremely cutthroat in Europe, and, fans always want players to be loyal, and they want them to stick through and fight out. But when you're not given that same type of loyalty, that's why you're going to see players do what's best for them. And you're going to continue to see that, because just like teams will do whatever they need to do to better themselves, players will do the same to put themselves in positions. And I think you'll start to see coaches doing that as well. So a free agency period would be great. Only problem is that, like you said, with so many different competitions, with the rifts between FIBA, EuroLeague, I don't think they'll ever agree to all do it at the same time. If they did, it would be very good for basketball. It would give teams a fair and even chance to get players the same time frame. I think the team that you're currently on should get the first dibs at you, should get the chance to get the first offer. And then you could be something like the NBA, where they do like a restricted free agent, where that team offered you, and if somebody doesn't pay more, you have to come back, something like that. And I think that would be fair if a guy signed an offer sheet and, he took it to other teams and did it that way. But some teams might be scared of that, because they could get into bidding wars, and they might not want to pay. But either way, if you don't pay the player, you probably won't get the guy you desire.
Yeah, there's another nice example of the NBA. When you try to hire somebody from the coaching staff or from the front office, you have to call that team's front office owner or somebody who's in charge, just to warn him that, we would like to have him in our team, and we will start this interviewing process. And it's kind of, gentleman way to start the negotiations. The problem in Europe is that probably more than a half of these deals are made without, approaching anybody behind the scenes, behind the table, under the table. So, yeah, a lot of things. Maybe you had any personal experiences? I mean, having teammates, coaches, having these deals being replaced or about to leave the team during the season. What do you remember the most? How they kind of reacted to it? How they acted after that?
Yeah, when I was 25 or 26. I was coming off like a breakout year in Europe. I had led the EuroCup in scoring, the Greek league in scoring. I think that year I got like Greek league MVP. And, halfway through the year, a key player on the EuroLeague team got hurt towards ACL. And, the team was trying to bring me in January. My team declined the buyout. And they was like, no, there's no buyout for him right now. The only buyout was during the summertime. So, that was that. I was okay with that. And then like 2 months later, one of the rivals of that team, they came and, they offered me. And it was March, and they wanted to meet for coffee. And I was like, I can't do that. Like I said, I wouldn't feel right. I was happy with my team. Obviously I had played at a level where they were no longer going to be able to afford me. And that was just the facts of it. No matter what they tried, they didn't have the financial means. And, I just felt like they put me in a position to where, I was able to showcase myself, to show myself. And I didn't want there to be any questions of, if I didn't took my foot off the gas, or, if I was out here, trying to not play as hard as I once did. If you have one bad game, and you might have just had a bad game, people might correlate that to something else. And I didn't want that. And I for sure didn't want to be seen in public. And I told, the owner that, like, I'm flattered. I appreciate your interest. It's a goal of mine to play at the EuroLeague level, and I want to get there. I said, but right now, with respect to my team, I feel like it would be unethical, and for me to be meeting with you and to be discussing next year when we could potentially play you in the playoffs. And he was on the phone and he said, I like you even more. And and then he raised the offer.
He went all in for that, yeah.
So and I didn't end up taking it. I waited, and I wanted to let the season finish. And I told him, like, yo, it's not that I don't want the offer. I'm flattered. At that time, I think they were like 4 or 5x in my salary, and so it wasn't that. The money was big, but I knew that if I'm getting that offer now, it's going to be there for me in June. And, I was patient to wait, had some other interests from other teams, but I just didn't want to do that. But I understand how some guys, it could be your first big contract, or it could be, a certain amount of money that you, couldn't imagine, or a city that you desire, some place that's perfect for your family. And it's extremely difficult to say no if it's everything that you wanted, and so people might say, yeah, I wouldn't sign, I wouldn't do that, but until you're in that situation, it's tough, and I was tempted, I thought about doing it. I was like, man, like, I don't want them to be mad at me because I said no, because, some teams get upset, when you turn them down one too many times, and they might not offer you no more.
Yeah, that's a tricky situation. Just the current rules, they really leave this window open for all these kind of crazy possibilities and opportunities. So maybe these rules, the ideal scenario would change the picture, and we would see like more competition, and even in domestic leagues in the end of the season, more fair fights and things like that. Because as I mentioned, you cannot judge everybody. Okay, they have deals for their own purposes. You never know what's the family situation in that team. Maybe he wants to be sure about his future. Maybe he has some injury concerns or whatsoever. So we cannot judge anybody, but at the same time, yeah, there has to be some rules. And for example, the situation we're talking about is one of these examples. Maccabi Tel Aviv, they're trying to get Xavi Pascal, who was still on his way to winning VTB title with Zenit St. Petersburg, and they're still trying to persuade him. When we will publish this episode, maybe we will read news that Zenit, in the end, they rejected the final offer of Maccabi, and Xavi Pascal is staying in Russia for one more year, which is actually very likely, at least from what I've heard from my sources. We'll see. Soon we will know. But at the same time, in this hypothetical situation, if not Xavi Pascal, who do you see as the best coach for this Maccabi Tel Aviv team, where I think that we have to take into consideration things like culture, the team which prefers signing a lot of American players, where the help of the local players is not as significant as, for example, I don't know, Lithuania, Greece, Turkey, or Spain. And it's a specific environment to play in, I think. So maybe it requires kind of a different coaching approach for that team.
Yeah, there's usually never an American coach in the EuroLeague, but if someone was going to do it, I think Maccabi would be the place to do it. I know Zagreus did it for a little bit, and they end up getting rid of that coach, but usually you just don't see it often. And I think that's something that they could think about, just because with so many foreign players, with the style of play that they play, up and down, very kind of NBA oriented, it might help to get somebody with that experience who's been there, whose game suits that. But if you're going to go European, I think really, if they're going to get rid of the Finner coach, I think he's probably the best coach on the market that's free, that would be clear, that you wouldn't have to worry about, that has experience and who has won at a high level and could potentially win the Turkish league this season. I mean, when you're getting a championship winning coach, I mean, it's not a bad way to go out. And, you saw what he did with
that's
Bologna.
another great example. That's another great example. The coach who is about to win the Turkish league against the EuroLeague champions knows that he's out of the team after the season, which is crazy. But yeah, Sasha Djordjevic, he will be available. I just didn't think about this scenario. That's a good point.
That's who I would go get if I was Finner. I mean, if I was on Maccabi, that's who I would go get.
I was actually thinking, I tried to think out of the box, because when there's a coaching spot in any of the EuroLeague teams, usually there is that closed circle of coaches, which is just changing teams year after year. And as you mentioned, there are not many American coaches here in Europe. There are not many successful, or let's say, coaches who has this trust and respect from the European basketball and from the elite EuroLeague teams. Because it's really hard for American coaches to get a job at the highest level. But I actually thought, okay, this is too late to throw this name, because that coach is going to Asia. But I was thinking, what about John Patrick? I mean, for 9 years, he was doing great job at Ludwigsburg, working for a mid-level German team with very limited financial resources, but having his own identity. He built a culture in Ludwigsburg with a lot of up-and-coming American players, starting from Royce O'Neal, for example. He started his European journey over there. Thomas Walkup, Nick Weiler-Babb, Jalen Smith, for example, some other guys. He's playing this sometimes crazy basketball with Tremel Darden at the center position. I mean, he's a modern coach with a lot of interesting ideas. He knows the culture. He knows the way how American players are thinking. He knows the culture. He could feel the culture of Tel Aviv. He has his interesting ideas, and he built a culture in Ludwigsburg, and Maccabi is now looking for a coach who could build a different culture in the Maccabi as well. So I thought about this name as well. But yeah, he's signing in Japan. He's going there. He never got a chance at the EuroLeague level, and I think that it's some kind of miss for European basketball.
Yeah, it's tough. The EuroLeague likes to play musical chairs with the coaches. They recycle the same coaches. It's very hard to break in. I think the next coach, although he did have EuroLeague experience briefly with Red Star, I mean, he's a guy you could look at too. From the coach from Bursa.
Coach Olimpievich, right?
Yeah, he did an excellent job. I thought he was solid the year he was at Red Star. I mean, I know they always have expectations to do a little bit more than their budget pertains, but I thought he did a solid job there. And then the job he did with Bursaspor was incredible. And sometimes you want to see it more than one year, but I think just the fact that he was able to knock off those big teams and to get his team playing at the right time at a high level, I mean, it just shows you his ability. And if those guys didn't get in such bad foul trouble in the first half, and if they didn't have so much nerves that first quarter, it could have been a different ballgame. Once they settled down, they played pretty evenly with Bologna, but that first quarter, you could tell they were not used to that stage. They were a little bit shook.
Yeah, I was also thinking about some traditional options, and I thought, what would be the best way to combine this American style of basketball with the EuroLeague style of basketball, with the intensity that Tel Aviv as the city offers, the fans offers. And I thought about Spanish coaches, and there's a 60-year-old Pedro Martinez, former Spanish League champion, who won the Spanish League 5 years ago. He did a great job with Manresa. I think they had the lowest budget in Spain, and they made the playoffs. For a long time, they were in the top 5. They were the best, the highest scoring Spanish League team as well. So trying to combine this run and gun Spanish basketball with a great ball movement, with the great ball sharing, bringing some discipline that Pedro Martinez always has with him, might be good, but we see all these reports, him being in talks with Valencia or in talks with Manresa to stay over there. It's not clear yet where he will end up. But if, for example, these negotiations with Xavi Pascal fails and he's still available, if I was a GM, Nikola Vujicic, I would really think about this coach as well.
Yeah, I think that would be a good fit. Just the fact that they want Pascal, you can tell that they want a system. They want control. They want to get guys to buy in to roles and to play with a little bit more control. And I think that's why they're trying their hardest to pry him away from Zenit. I don't think they're going to be successful. This is the first time there's been a new champion in the VTV league in 9 or 10 years, and Zenit got a taste of that success. You don't just let that person walk out the door.
Yeah, especially when there's no buyout clause, and I mean they showed a lot of love to him. They paid huge bonuses. He's getting paid really well, and probably they will increase the salary for the next year. So even from Xavi's side, I mean, he might make a smart move of staying there and waiting for the next year's free agency, because we will have all these teams like Real Madrid, Barcelona, with coaches on expiring contracts. So yeah, if I would bet, I would say that Xavi is staying there, and probably Nikola Vujicic will have to listen to this podcast, to find some good suggestions for the head coaching possibility. Yeah.
Yeah, if he decided to leave, he's gonna be coaching for free next year, because that buyout gonna be huge.
Yeah. And to wrap it up, I asked you to do some homework for this podcast as the EuroCup representative, as a guy who knows, who reads the game very well, and who knows the difference between the EuroCup and EuroLeague basketball with this kind of narrow market, EuroLeague market this summer. Who would be your 5 picks from the EuroCup who could have some success in the EuroLeague, and especially if it's possible to make it by every position?
A guy I really like, he's special, Caleb Holmesley. He's 6'5", 6'6". He can really shoot the ball, can pass, can play the pick and roll. He is a guy who's a EuroLeague talent. Has the NBA skill set. He's a French guy. He could go to the NBA. He could play EuroLeague. I'd be shocked if he's not in the EuroLeague next year because I was extremely impressed with him and things he did at Hamburg.
I think he's doing some NBA workouts at the moment, and of course his primary goal is the NBA right now. But from what I heard, that of course he has significant interest from the EuroLeague teams, and there was reported as well that Žalgiris Kaunas was looking at him, and I believe that there are even bigger caliber teams on the EuroLeague market looking for him. So if not the NBA, I really think that he will end up in the EuroLeague tournament next season.
Yeah, and there were some guys who I think some teams were trying to buy him out in the middle of the year, some EuroLeague teams, and Hamburg refused. But
that's true.
He was a guy, if you remember when we talked earlier, he was on my list for the top 5 guys. Another guy who was on my list, Jerome Blossom game.
Yeah,
I really like him. I mean, this is a guy who can shoot the 3, who's physical, who's strong, who can guard multiple positions. You can put him as a 3-man, you can put him as a 4, but he can guard 1 through 4. He rebounds. He's special. had got them a steal. I'm not sure how he ended up there. But, he's a guy who's a clear EuroLeague talent, and I knew it from just watching the games. And you saw the performance he put on, during the EuroCup playoffs. He was not afraid of the moment. He's a guy whose game I like. I don't know him personally, but, very talented player. And then clear, easy one, Jonathan Motley. I mean,
of course,
like this is, even the blind can see this. This is a guy who can, dominate the interior and the post, has a good face-up game. Is a versatile big man, kind of like a more athletic Kyle Hines when it comes to getting the ball off the rebound, pushing in transition. He's not the defensive player Kyle Hines is, but he can guard, and he's much more offensively. A guy who can dominate the glass, dunk everything. I mean, he's just a nightmare for bigs. I watched him give Nikolai Milutinov problems in the playoffs. Cheska was sending double teams, and they got to the point where they took him off him because he was just too quick, too agile for him. And he can step out and shoot the 3. He's a guy that he'll be fringe NBA, probably get a monster deal in China, or a big deal in the EuroLeague team. It just depends on what he wants to do with his career.
I'm actually shocked that he's still unsigned, at least in the EuroLeague, because I was sure that all the top teams will go after him, because all the top teams, they were looking for centers like Barcelona, like Fenerbahce, like some other clubs, even Olympiacos, Efes. I mean, everybody.
Yes.
But from what I've heard, maybe only Fenerbahce is linked with John, with Motley, and I didn't hear much about him. You mentioned China, and from what I've heard, it's an option because they can pay a lot. But I just really hope that, I think that he belongs to the EuroLeague. He might make some noise over there, and if he will be successful the next season, he can dominate EuroLeague basketball for 4 years. Yeah. So I just hope that maybe he will choose less money now, but the reward in the long term, it would be even better for him here in Europe.
Yeah, he could be a star. It's just the fact that he doesn't have a job, somebody just took him off the market immediately, like some of these other guys. It's baffling. I don't know what's going on. I know that guys covet Jan Vesely, but to me, he's more versatile. He can do more. He's younger, and he's cheaper. It's like he checks off all those boxes. But I know teams, consistency. They like guys who have done it over and over again. But this is a guy that can get it done, and he can switch 1 through 5. He can guard guards. He can guard bigs. He can play some 4. I know Brandon Davies is also probably going to be on the market as well. So he's a coveted big man. So maybe that has something to do with it. But there's a lot of teams who I saw who could use his services.
Yeah. Now I see and hear EuroLeague GMs getting closer to the screen, listening to your backcourt suggestions from the EuroCup.
Yes.
What do you have?
So a backcourt player that I really like, and I think he brings some versatility. He has that size, that Wade Baldwin size. He's extremely athletic. He's a pass-first guard, Darius Thompson. He's a guy that, should be on the EuroLeague radar. He can run a team. He's excellent in transition. he's continued to develop and showing his pick and roll skills. And I think you really saw him start to blossom in the EuroCup this year. He was one of the better players. To me personally, the best point guard, either him or Justin Cobbs. And he just showed his versatility. He can guard 1 through 4. Oftentimes we switch with them. And he showed his ability to shoot the spot up shot. He can hit that shot. He's a guy who likes to live in the paint, drive, and create for his teammates. But if you do force him in that position to where he has to shoot it, he will shoot. He's just a guy who likes to get the team involved. So he's a guy that I think should be at probably those teams that are in that 9 through like 14 or 15 range. He could be a guard that could really do something for him. I think he would be perfect with the Tutis because the Tutis likes taller guards. He likes to switch with them, and he's a guy that he can kind of tutor along the way and help his game develop, as you've seen him do with some players. Kind of like when he took Corey Higgins, when people probably didn't really expect that coming from Gaziantep. People were like, "This is a questionable signing," and then Corey Higgins became one of the better guards in the EuroLeague.
Yeah, Žalgiris is one of the teams that asked about Darius Thompson, but the problem is that he's still under contract with Krasnodar for the next year. And I'm not sure about the buyout, so it might be not so easy to get him out of there. But I also see him as the borderline EuroLeague player for sure. Even for teams like Žalgiris, for the bottom teams, it's probably the best platform even for himself. To try, to check, to learn, to adjust, to get a lot of minutes, a lot of responsibilities, and to be leader of the team. There were some concerns, but there's some people that if he's vocal enough to be a point guard, what do you think about that? Maybe he needs some fired up guy next to him, to be successful floor general for his team.
Yeah, I think he's a guy that has that ability. He's such a good teammate that he's going to always put the team first. He's very likable. But I think as he starts to age and get more experience, you'll start to see him be more vocal, control the offense, command offense. But I think he's a point guard. I know a lot of teams want to use him as a combo, but I think he can be your lead guard. I think he can be the guy to get you in spots. I think you pair him with a good scorer, and you'll see him continue to blossom. Right? Give him a guy who can score, and he's going to find a way to make the game easier for them. I know for me, he was really good at driving, kicking, getting in the paint. His head is always up. He's throwing the ball ahead. I mean, he does the little things that sometimes you don't see in the statistics, but he also will get you, 12, 13 points, 6 assists, 6 rebounds. I mean, he's a triple-double threat, on the majority of nights.
Okay, so who's your fifth guy on this list?
And then the fifth guy, I tried to name all guys who haven't played in the EuroLeague just because it'll give you more intrigue. It shows you things. So the fifth guy who had a really good year, a breakout year, I would say, is Will Cummins. He's a smaller guard. But he's fast, he's quick, he's a crafty finisher on the inside. He improved his jump shot. I think that's what really hurt him earlier in his career. It's hard to be a slasher, at 6 foot. You have to have some balance to your game. And this year you started to see him, hit some threes off the dribble, come off the screen. We saw his pick and roll game improve, and he became a better facilitator. I think that was all he was missing, was a consistent jump shot and the ability to facilitate. Oftentimes, if you want to score and you want to be efficient, you have to be able to pass the ball. I'm not saying you need to be Steve Nash or a guy who's out there getting 8, 9 assists, but if you're a guy who can get 4 or 5 assists and create some easy shots for your teammates, it kind of keeps the defense honest and prevents them from bringing all the defensive attention to you. And if they do that, you have the ability to, maybe you don't score that night, but you can go get 10, 11 assists and kind of control the game there. So I think he's a guy that, has not yet played at the EuroLeague level. He'll be a guy who's probably on a high-level EuroCup team or a low-level EuroLeague team, and he's going to have to be, improve defensively, continue to fight, do his things, because there will be some mismatches because of the size. They'll try to post him, and once you show some toughness and you show your ability to guard the post, EuroLeague teams won't test you then. But you have to show it early. So those are my 5. Those are the guys who have not played in the EuroLeague who I think have the potential, the capabilities to, and they're all under 30 years old. So, that's something to look at.
Yeah, I remember that Cummings was on a rise after his German experience with Vechta. And I remember that even many EuroLeague teams were following him very closely. But I think that many of them got scared after his locomotive season. As I mentioned, he had some shooting woes that year. Maybe he struggled to run the team as the point guard, and I remember that Mantas Kalnietis was taking a lot of point guard responsibilities, playing a lot of minutes, and probably that's where some teams backed off of signing him, especially for the EuroLeague level. But for the things he did in France this year, for the adjustments he made, for his improvement, probably some EuroLeague team might end up signing him. Of course, there are not many open roster spaces left in the EuroLeague, especially for guards. But at least as a backup, I think that it might be very interesting choice.
Yeah.
And yeah, you made a good promo for all of the 5 guys. I hope that they're gonna take you for a dinner.
Yeah, and then
especially Motley. I mean, you kept praising him from mid-season, so
yeah, I tried to warn
he
you.
owes you a lot.
I tried to warn Europe about him. I foresaw the dominance coming. My honorable mention guy, who I wanted to slide in there, but I could only have 5 players. Cody McIntyre Miller. He's a guard who has great size, extremely athletic. One of the fastest guys with the ball in the break. Showed his ability. He's always been a good passer, a good rebounder, a good defender. I think what's hurt him in the past is the consistency in the jump shot. And this year, you've seen the ACB lead. He started to show that, you can't leave him open no more. He can make that shot. And he had a very strong season. And he took his team deep in the playoffs of the EuroCup. They didn't have a lot of success in the ACB, but I don't contribute that to one player. It's a team game. A lot of times you need other players to step up around you. And with that roster, sometimes they did not always have it, but the fact that they were able to get to the Final Four of the EuroCup, was excellent. I think he was the driving force behind that. So he's a guy who's extremely talented as well, and a guy I like. And as long as he continues to hone that jump shot, I think you'll see him, climb up the ranks quickly because he has the physical profile that EuroLeague coaches covet.
Yeah, so a lot of great suggestions for the EuroLeague GMs to consider. Thanks a lot for your time, Errick. I mean, it was a great basketball conversation once again. I'm happy to have you here. I hope to have you more this month. Maybe one of the more interesting and most entertaining coaches might join us as well for this podcast, because of course we will have a lot of interesting off-season moves. We still have domestic league finals, for example, in Spain. Barca and Real Madrid, they're just starting their series today on Monday. Virtus Bologna, Armani Milan final series, Olympiacos Monaco. So there's still a lot of basketball to talk about. And of course, free agency is not sleeping anytime in Europe. There are no rules, no free agency period. So every night we might have some interesting transfers. So once again, Errick, it's a pleasure to have you here. And I hope to see you guys. I hope to see you on the podcast in the future as well.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, and it's fun always coming on a podcast with you. And for sure, I'll be here in the future as long as you'll have me.
Follow us on BasketNews.com and on our Basket News YouTube channel. See you soon.